Welcome to the Writer's Journey podcast. I'm Michael Laran, a science fiction and fantasy author on a journey to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I pull back the curtain on my writing life and how I'm building a writing career while working a full-time job, raising a family, and attending law school classes in the evenings. You can find show notes for this week's episode, a free starter library of my fiction, and much more at michaellaran.com. Hello and welcome to episode 132. 132 is a good number, and we are in week 7 of Beast Mode. Week 7, and I've got some interesting things that have been going on that I wanted to talk about because my productivity has slowed temporarily, and so just in interest of transparency, want to make sure that I discuss that. But first things first, I want to apologize. I found out that the episode that I uploaded last week didn't 100% upload, and so it resulted in last week's episode of The Writer's Journey being like 7 minutes long, which is the shortest episode ever. Well, that was a glitch, and I apologize for those of you where it ended abruptly, and you're like, hey, what's going on here? I did re-upload the episode later in the day, but I don't know if everyone saw it. So just so you know, it's out there now. The issue should be corrected, but I apologize for those of you who were wondering what happened to the other 20 minutes of the episode. So you can listen to it now if you like. Now, the second thing I wanted to talk about was that last week I told everybody that I was having my first ever live stream video. So I did a live stream on a writing power hour. So we spent 90 minutes. We shot the breeze for quite a bit of it. And then everyone who was on the call, we wrote toward our next work in progress. And it went great. 60 people streamed in. I think it was 64 people at its peak. 64 people tuned in, and they were from all over the United States, Europe, and Southeast Asia. I think there might have been one Aussie with us as well. And together as a community, we wrote 23,000 words as a community in about 90 minutes. Now, to me, that's a huge win. That's about half a novel. If your definition of a novel is 50,000 words, that's 23,000 words that we wrote as a community. And everyone said that they wanted me to continue doing this. Everybody had a lot of fun. So I am going to officially continue these writing power hours. We'll probably do them once a month. It'll be Saturday. I'm not sure which Saturday of the month it will be, but I will try to make it as consistent as possible so that you kind of know when to tune in. And these will be available on YouTube. You just go to the YouTube page and it'll be there. But we will also have replays. So the Saturday event, you can find a replay at authorlevelup.com/videos or at youtube.com/authorlevelup. You'll see the replay, and I've put timestamps in the replay for your convenience. So the moments where we kind of chatted and got to know each other a little bit, had a little bit of fun, you can skip to those bits if you like, and or if you want to watch and replay and watch the entire replay, you can do that too, but it might be a little boring. So I will continue that. More to come. So for my win for the week, I did get the first illustration back for my book Project Atlas, and the illustrator, it took her some time. She kept saying, hey, I need a little bit more time, and I'd say okay, and then she'd come back and say, hey, I need a little bit more time, and I'd say okay, and finally she got me the first draft of the first illustration, and it looks really, really good, and I couldn't be happier with what she has put together. So now she's working on the rest of the illustrations. She said she needs about 5 more days. I think she's probably going to need a little bit more time, but based on what she did for this first one, I'm good with that. There's no problems at all. And I did share it with my Patreon group. So if you are one of my patrons, you saw her first draft, and you can look at that at patreon.com/michaellaran if you didn't know that I had a Patreon page. But I can't really say any more than that. Other than that, the drafts are in. They look really good. I actually popped the draft into the Vellum file of the book, and Vellum has this really cool feature, and I guess this is the thing I've learned for the week. I'll just segue into that as well. Vellum has this new feature. I think they launched it earlier this year, and it's called full page image. So you can designate an entire page in your ebook or in your paperback to have nothing but the image on it. And then it has a couple of other specifications that you can do. And the specifications that I gave her, they worked perfectly for the Vellum file. It looks really good. Like, it looks good in black and white, and it looks good in color. And I am just excited because what I'm going after is, I think I have so many different places where I talk about stuff. I never remember what I say about some of the stuff I'm doing. But it's basically a travel guide, and I'm mimicking kind of the Lonely Planet travel guides. And so having images and maps and stuff is going to be a really great feature, I think. And so this does achieve that imitation. Like, it looks really legit, and I am pumped. I cannot wait to put these into the book and get the book out there. But the win for the week is that, yes, I got the illustration back, but now that I know what color scheme she's using, I can now give that to the cover designer. And I can have the cover designer start to develop a cover design that will use those color schemes so that everything is externally consistent and internally consistent, which I think is helpful. I was just kind of waiting on that because I don't want to jump the gun. So anyway, I've talked about that too long. That's my win for the week. And my lesson learned was this new feature in Vellum. I saw the announcement when it came out, and I was like, put that in the back of your head. And now it's a feature that I'm able to use and take advantage of. So if you have images that you want to put in your ebook, this is a feature that's actually really cool. And, it's one of those weird things. I always almost never recommend putting images in an ebook. I've got, I don't know, over 50 books right now, and only 3 of my books at the moment have any kind of images in them. Everything else is plain text. Like my first novel, it's got a couple images in it because it helps it pop. There's like a game show, and there's some prizes and stuff, and so I put the images of the prizes in there. And then Theo and the Festival of Shadows, there are some images in there. There's some images in my book, Indie Poet Formatting, which is basically a visual tutorial on how to format a book of poetry for print and ebook. And this one, like, I almost never recommend it because on Amazon, you lose money the bigger your ebook files are. So I know that I'm going to be losing a bit of money by putting images in this book. Like, it is an intentional, I know that, but I'm just going to charge a little bit extra for it to help offset that cost. So that's my lesson learned for the week. All right, and so now for idea of the week. The idea of the week is just something I read that I thought would be a really interesting idea. I can't claim to come up with this, but I thought I would amplify the signal because it is an interesting idea. And it almost has nothing to do with indies. Like, it kind of does, but not really. And that is the idea of using artificial intelligence to help you wade through a slush pile. Isn't that interesting? So if you submit short stories to a magazine, or if you submit, a novel to a literary agent or whatever, might they be able to use artificial intelligence to help them wade through the slush pile and identify the books that they are most interested in or the ones that they are most likely to buy? That's interesting. That technology could be used for good and evil. Like, it ultimately depends on the bias. Like, you would hope that there's no bias in software like that, because then it just magnifies the current problems that we have today, right? That we've got people that are underrepresented that struggle to get into gatekeeping venues such as traditional publishers or short stories. But if you can get over that, it's an interesting force for good, isn't it? Because then you've got an editor that can spend more time looking at the stories that are important to them. So take Clark's World, or even like the New Yorker. You can just imagine how many magazine submissions they get on a daily basis. I don't know what the number is, but it's got to be gigantic because they are some of the best paying magazines that you can submit your work to. If you get your work into the New Yorker, that is a very lucrative payday. If you get into Clark's World or Ellery Queen or any of these magazines, I mean, they pay really, really good money. And so I don't know, might it help editors find new and unique voices while also making sure that, like, it would also give you some assurance that as an author that your work was at least heard or at least seen. And okay, it didn't meet the specifications of whatever the program was looking for, but at least you know that it was reviewed. And the reason that's interesting is because when you submit your resume to a company nowadays, your resume goes through in most companies, it goes through some sort of artificial intelligence program. And the program scans your resume for keywords. And if your resume doesn't have the right keywords in it, then it becomes invisible, and then the hiring manager never sees it. Now, most people don't know that, but that is true. That's exactly what happens at a fair amount of companies nowadays do that. And so I wonder if something like that will ever come to the writing space. Maybe not, but it's just an interesting idea to think about. As we think about this new world that we're moving into, I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what technology is going to take hold and what technology is going to be cheap enough for companies to adopt. But that's an interesting thing to think about, isn't it? So, all right. So what I wanted to talk about for the balance of this week was, well, first things first, I named this episode Pre-Incident Indicators. Now, what the heck does that mean, Michael? I will explain. So what I want to talk about this week is how a recent life event almost plunged me into despair and how the universe helped me along. So this is kind of a long story, so I apologize in advance. Just trust me that I'm getting to something that I hope will be good, and I hope it will be helpful to some of you wherever you are in your writing career right now. Because I think what I ultimately came to was very insightful for me and very helpful and very comforting to me in what I am currently dealing with in my life. So I'll preface this with saying that I've been in beast mode, and beast mode has been fantastic. I have seen a bit of a dip, and I was going from writing 3,000 words to 5,000 words a day, and suddenly things started to dip, and I couldn't really figure out why. And I've done this enough, and I've experienced these dips enough to go from 3,000 down to 200 words a day to know, okay, how do I respond to this? Because one of the things I talk about in my book, Be a Writing Machine, authorlevelup.com/machine, if you're interested, is that writer's block has 3 root causes. The first root cause is lack of inspiration. I don't have that problem. I have too much inspiration. I could write, when I die, there's going to be hundreds of books that I will not have written. Doesn't matter how old I am. All right, so that's not my problem. Second root cause is fear. And I like to think that I have eliminated fear as much as I can from my writing world. If that weren't true, I would not be able to accomplish all the things that I accomplish on a daily basis. So I knew fear wasn't the problem. And then the third root cause is what I like to call personal circumstances. So these are the things that happen in your life that you have to deal with them when they come up. And sometimes it could be a death in the family. It could be an illness. It could be a financial situation. I mean, there's all sorts of things that happen in life, right? But life happens, and when you can't write as a result of that, your brain and your subconscious stops you from writing because it wants you to divert your energy and your attention to solving the problem at hand. Once that problem has been dealt with, you'll find that the writer's block will go away. All right. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I've got plenty of inspiration. Like, that's not my problem. I'm not really scared of anything. So I don't know what's going on. There's probably something in my life that's going to happen. And my subconscious is getting me ready for it. So sure enough, I think I recognized this on it was like a Tuesday. And then on the following Thursday, some interesting things happen. So again, here's where the story gets a little bit long, but I hope that this will be interesting. I'll try to make it as entertaining as I can. So we've got a babysitter that comes to watch my daughter, and she helps her with her schoolwork during the day, and that way my wife and I can work from home and do what we need to do. And usually we pay the babysitter every week. So this particular week, for whatever reason, I didn't have the cash in my wallet to give to her, so I needed to go to the bank, just right up the street, to get the cash to pay her. Right. So I go on break at work. I get my keys. I get in the car, and I'm like, I haven't listened to podcasts in a really long time. In fact, I haven't listened to podcasts in the car since the pandemic started. And you guys know I'm a big podcast listener, but I will admit I just have not listened to them very much. One, because the headphones that I have died and I've been too cheap to go off and buy new ones. And then two, I just haven't been in my car. So that's a recipe for a podcast backlog that's like hundreds of episodes long. And I look at it like every week, and I just get anxiety, and I'm like, I don't want to do anything about this today. So I was in the car, and I'm like, okay, this whole thing's going to take me about 10 minutes. Let me just listen to a podcast. Let me just knock out one of the backlist episodes and see what's happening out there in the podcast web. And while I was driving to the bank, there was an ad for a show, and I won't say what show it was because it's not really that important. But there was an ad in the middle of a show, advertising one of their guests or something, and it was an interview with Gavin DeBecker. And if you don't know who Gavin DeBecker is, he is a security consultant for Oprah, and I think he was like Oprah's top security guy, and now he's the security consultant for Jeff Bezos. So he protects very rich people, right? And it talked about his book, and this book is called The Gift of Fear. And I'll drop an affiliate link to it in the show notes if you're interested in it. I have not read it. But it talked about the book and how the book goes over learning how to spot the warning signs of dangerous people. Because if you can understand what those warning signs look like, it could potentially save your life. Right. And at the time I was like, the way they pitched it, it was like, oh, you got to read this book or you'll die. I mean, I'm being a little exaggerating a little bit, but that's basically what they said. So I was like, that's a pretty good marketing. I'll have to check this book out. And so as I was driving, I made this mental note, and I thought that's an interesting book. And it sounds like something that, certainly sounds like something I would want to read. So I was like, okay, I'll make a mental note of it and whatever. So anyway, I go to the bank, and then do what I need to do, and then as I'm pulling into my driveway, I get this text message from my boss, and my boss is like, "Hey, Michael, we've got a meeting here in about 15 minutes. It was just thrown on our calendar. Make sure you can attend." And I was like, "Okay, there's going to be some sort of an announcement because if you work in corporate America, I imagine that." Every corporation is this way. Whenever a meeting is thrown impromptu on the calendar within 15 minutes, usually means something bad's going to happen. So I'm thinking, okay, it's probably not a good thing. So anyway, I get down, get back to work, log back in, and sure enough, there is an announcement that there's going to be a reorganization and a realignment. Some people have been let go, so on and so forth. Anyway, long story short, I'm fine. I don't have to worry about anything. But, my boss, unfortunately, is not going to be with me anymore. And so that was unfortunate and, gave me some pause and I was pretty sad about that. And, I started thinking about the future, and I'm like, okay, well, what does this mean for me? And, who am I, where am I going to end up? Because everything got shaken up, and I won't go any more into that, but everything got shaken up, and it was just a big like political earthquake in my department and among my colleagues and among my boss and among all the other people that I work for. Like everything is being shaken up. And so I thought, what does this mean? What is this going to mean for me? Because I can apply for some other roles. I don't have to, but I can apply for some other roles if I want to. I can stay I can stay in place if I want to. Like there's pros and cons to each thing. And so I'm thinking, what do I do? And I'm thinking I got to make the best decision for myself and for my family. And over the weekend, my mind went back to where I was during the March pandemic, when everything was shutting down, when every day was like a media circus because you didn't know what the hell was going on with this pandemic, and the death numbers were rising. And I, like a lot of people, anxiety was going up about, well, what does all of this mean for the world? Am I going to have a job in the next week? You know what I'm talking about, and I instantly went back to March, and I had a lot of fear, and I had a lot of anxiety, and I had a lot of worry. And later that evening, I couldn't concentrate because I was thinking about that announcement and what it would mean for myself and my boss and my colleagues. And for whatever reason, I don't remember why, I remembered the book. And I thought, that book by Gavin DeBecker that they were talking about in the podcast, maybe I need to take my mind off of some things. I'll go and read it. It had nothing to do with anything. It was just, I'm tired of thinking about this crap, so let me escape into a book for a little bit. And so what I ended up doing first is anytime I want to look someone up, I always look them up on YouTube first, because I like to see any kind of talks that they've given, what kind of things people are saying about that person. And if I like the person's personality, or if I like some of the talks that they're giving, that's a green light for me to go off and buy the book. So anyway, I found a YouTube talk by Gavin DeBecker, and I'll link to it. It's absolutely fascinating. I think it was like an hour long. And he's giving a speech at, I think, St. Francis University. And he's talking about the book. And he was talking about how to spot what's called pre-incident signals. And like I said, I'll link to this video. I didn't think I'd watch the whole thing. I was enraptured from the moment he started speaking up until he finished, and I didn't want it to be over, honestly. And honestly, I think that this video, for anyone watching who's a female, I think that this is an especially important video to watch, because he talks about serial killers, and he talks about, he gives some really, really scary stories about situations that women have been in, and how they could have easily gotten out of these situations, or how maybe they ignored some of what he calls the pre-incident indicators. And his argument is that no matter who you are, male or female, these pre-incident indicators exist, and we have to learn how to spot them. And being able to spot them can change our lives. And so something he said in the middle of his talk is when I started getting these really interesting ideas. He said in the talk that there's a difference between true fear and anxiety. There's a difference between true fear and anxiety. And he said that a lot of people get them mixed up. True fear happens because of something in your environment. So for example, if you're walking along and you see a saber-toothed tiger, you got a problem. That's true fear. And true fear can save your life. And he gave this really great example of how there was a surfer, and the surfer was just minding his own business, and he looked down, and all of a sudden this giant great white shark was rising up at him. Can you imagine that just for a moment? Like that just... Anyway, so the shark bit him, and he's in the jaws of this shark, and somehow, he doesn't remember how he did it, but somehow he got this idea to reach around and jam his thumbs into the shark's eyes. And then the shark, that's how he was able to get the shark off of him. But he doesn't remember actually doing it. Everything just kind of happened in slow motion, and that saved his life. And the point that Gavin DeBecker was trying to make is that when you're in the embrace of true fear makes you do things that you would not have normally considered, but that will save your life. So true fear can actually save your life. But true fear happens because of something in your environment. So a shark, or a serial killer, or something, or some type of situation that means you harm. Your body will kick in and try to help you. All right. Now, this is to be contrasted with anxiety, which happens because of something that you imagine or something that you remember. So in the first case, fear will save your life. In the second case, anxiety can make you destructively unproductive. And then I started thinking about all these things that were going on at work, and I realized that what I thought was fear was not fear at all. It was anxiety, you know? And I realized that everything that I was worried about, all these different scenarios that were going on through my head, these were scenarios that I had imagined. They weren't anything that posed any kind of bodily danger to me. And so I realized that, and I was thinking to myself, that's interesting. And I'm thinking about all of this literally as this guy's talking. So I'm still watching the talk. And then he said in the talk that he even said it. It was almost like he was speaking to me. He said, losing your job isn't something that you should stress over. And he's like, a lion is not going to eat you. You know, you might not have any money to eat, but you're still alive. There's a difference, you know. And as I thought about that, that really hit me hard. And I was thinking over the weekend, I was like, wow, that was really impactful. And it gave me some peace at a time where I was not okay. Right. And so then all the wildfires on the West Coast started happening. And for anyone who's on the West Coast, my heart goes out to you. Just horrible to watch some of these towns just get destroyed, and the air quality really hurt people. So if you're listening and you're in California, just know that I've been praying for you every day, because it's just hard to watch what's happening on the West Coast right now. And so I've been watching interviews with people who've lost everything. And there was one guy who was talking about how all he had was the shirt on his back. You know, I think he had like a phone or something. And he's like, I lost everything I owned, but I'm still alive and I can start rebuilding, and I thought that was powerful. And he wasn't the first person that said that. There were a number of people in interviews that said that. And that really put me into, kind of put all the things I was going through into perspective, and so where I'm going with all of this is that it was this weird, some people don't believe that there's any coincidences in the world, that everything that happens is simply, I don't know the right word for it. It's just random chance. It's just random chance that I happen to come across this video by DeBecker. Random chance that all the things happened the way that they did. But I think that the universe was trying to tell me something, and it began with that choice in the car to listen to a podcast, and I don't know why I did it. I've driven in my car dozens of times since the pandemic, even though I haven't used it very often. This was the only time in those dozens of times where my brain said, listen to this show. You may want to listen to it. And I did. And lo and behold, I heard that piece, that seed of advice that would bear fruit later on when I needed it later that day. And I have learned, and this is something that I have had to learn over and over again, because I said in the show earlier that fear is not really a problem for me. You don't get to write 50 books, and you don't do as many things as I do, balancing a family, balancing a challenging and very stressful job at a Fortune 100 insurance company, and working as a, teaching insurance classes, going to law school, working as an outreach manager for the Alliance of Independent Authors, and all the other things that I have going on, and continue to write books and have a YouTube channel and have a podcast and do all the things that I do on a daily basis without having eliminated fear to some major extent in my life. And I don't say that to brag. I just say that because I'm able to do a lot more things because I have minimized that fear. Like for me, there really are no boundaries. Like if I want to do something, I just do it. And if I succeed, it's cool. And usually when I succeed at greater levels than I thought I would get to. And when I fail, I fail. It's not a big deal. to me. And so one of the things that I've had to continuously learn, and I feel like this is a lesson I've learned in the past, but I feel like I've learned it in a different color, is that to stop being afraid of things that don't pose a threat to your existence. So to put this into perspective for writers, very easy to be afraid of your book not selling. Very easy to be afraid of writing a book that no one will want. Very easy to be afraid of putting together some ads that don't connect. Very easy to be afraid of trying to improve your craft and feeling like you never get there. Very easy to be afraid of being targeted by somebody because of something that you wrote or getting bad reviews. I mean, you know where I'm going with this. There's all sorts of things that we have to be afraid of. And they're almost all things that we manufacture, right? I mean, we think that our book is not going to be successful. I think I talked about this last week. I was talking to somebody, and they told me they were so worried about a particular character in their book because they thought that people would, they thought that there would be some backlash politically because of something that this character does, right? And I told this person, I said, well, how do you know that that is true? How do you know that they're even going to care? Well, you're not going to know until you publish the book. And if they do act that way, at least you were prepared. At least you identified it. At least you have some sort of strategy, at least I hope you do, about how to address it. But what happens if they don't even care? What happens if they actually like that character? And what if that character is the most endearing character in the book and you almost scrap the book because of something that you thought people would do because of what you've seen on television, in terms of the media and the Me Too movement and all these things, right? So that was my message. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but to me, it's better to take that chance for a story that you believe in than to shelve it and just constantly think for the rest of your life what possibly could have been, And all I'm saying is that there's nothing to be afraid of in the writing life. There's really nothing to be afraid of in your life. I've known this in the writing life for a while, but I had to relearn it again in another area of my life. And so I don't know what the future holds for me professionally, but I'm not really going to worry about it that much, even though, things are going to change a little bit in terms of what my, 9 to 5 looks like. But at the end of the day, I kind of going through all the other areas of my life, not really a big deal in the greater scheme of things. And I've got some advantages and some opportunities that I can take advantage of. And my focus is, how do I come out of this stronger? And how do I come out of this in a way that, helps me out and allows me to continue doing what I'm doing, right? So I know that that's a little vague, but it'll be interesting. I'll definitely know by the end of the year where I'm going to end up and what my professional future looks like. And, that's always a cause for anxiety. But what I had to remember is that this is not a threat to my existence. It's just a change. There is a difference. Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed this episode, you'll enjoy my backlist episodes at michaelaran.com/podcast. For your free starter library of my favorite novels, join my fan club by visiting michaelaran.com/fanclub. If you're a writer and want to connect with me further, check out my YouTube channel, Author Level Up, for helpful writing advice at authorlevelup.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back next week.